Okay, so let's dive into this. Starting around, what, 2019, the whole world of education just seemed to flip upside down, didn't it?
It really did. A massive, sudden shift. Millions of people, students, teachers, everyone had to figure out distance learning almost overnight.
Yeah, learning and teaching when you're not even in the same room, it felt like a huge, unplanned experiment.
Absolutely. A global pivot, really.
Yeah.
And it made us all think hard about what makes learning actually work when it's, through a screen.
Exactly. And that gets to the heart of what we're exploring today. It's not just about having the tech, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's about what makes someone feel confident, feel capable when they're learning or teaching online.
That sense of self-belief, it's so critical.
Yeah, that confidence, that self-efficacy, because how you feel about your ability seems to affect everything else.
It really does. That feeling, self-efficacy, it's tied to whether you keep going, how you handle bumps in the road if you succeed, and maybe it's even more vital in distance education with all its unique challenges.
Makes sense. So for this deep dive, we've got a research paper that looks specifically at this distance education self-efficacy.
And they looked at a specific group too, right?
They did, future history teachers, which is quite an interesting group to consider.
Definitely people training for a job where they'll likely use all sorts of teaching methods down the line.
So our mission here is to really unpack this paper, pull out the key insights it offers about what shapes that readiness, that self-efficacy in distance learning. And we're sticking just to what this source tells us.
Right. Let's get into it.
Okay, so first, we probably need to get a handle on the main ideas the paper uses, the building blocks. First up, distance education itself. How does the paper define it?
Pretty simply, actually. It's just learning that happens independent of time and space, using technology to bridge that gap.
Right, and the paper points out this isn't exactly brand new. People have been learning remotely for centuries in different ways.
Yeah, though modern tech obviously makes the interaction part, much easier.
But it also stresses that distance ed isn't just a backup plan. The source says it can actually solve some problems traditional education has, offers things like flexibility, helps with lifelong learning.
That's a key point, seeing it as having its own strengths, not just being second best.
Okay, so that's distance ed. Then the paper brings in this really important psychological concept, self-efficacy. Comes from Bandura's theory, right?
Yes, Albert Bandura.
Yeah.
And self-efficacy, it's basically your belief in your own ability to do something specific, to succeed in a particular task.
Like, do I believe I can actually do this online course or teach this online class effectively?
Exactly. It's that internal confidence check.
And why is that belief so powerful? What does the paper say?
Well, based on the theory, it's directly linked to your motivation, how you cope with problems, whether you persevere when it gets tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Low self-efficacy can lead to feeling like hopeless, but high self-efficacy means you're more likely to put in the effort, be patient, and ultimately succeed.
That makes total sense. If you think you're going to fail, you probably won't try as hard, or you'll give up sooner.
Precisely. And the paper connects this straight to distance education. It says beliefs and attitudes about technology can be huge barriers.
So your self-efficacy towards distance learning is a major factor.
A main factor affecting the whole process, according to the source. Things like technical problems, they cause stress, and that directly impacts the learning.
So a bad internet connection isn't just annoying. It can actually damage your confidence in being able to learn that way.
Right. And conversely, the paper mentions if you've had good experiences with distance before, that tends to boost your self-efficacy, which makes sense, right? Success breeds confidence.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we have distance ed, self-efficacy. And what's the third piece? Readiness.
Readiness. The paper defines this as having the necessary competencies, both psychological and practical skills needed for learning in that specific context.
So for distance education, that would mean things like
Things like feeling okay with computers and the internet, computer self-efficacy, internet self-efficacy, having skills for learning on your own, just general ability with online learning tasks.
so readiness is sort of the foundation, having the skills and the mindset.
Yeah, the paper says this readiness and competence directly influence learning. It's like the base layer needed to even engage properly.
Got it.
Yeah.
They seem really linked then, readiness and self-efficacy. Like being ready helps you feel confident.
Absolutely. They feed into each other. Readiness gives you the tools. Self-efficacy is the belief you can use them effectively.
Okay, so with those concepts defined, distance ed, self-efficacy, readiness, let's get into the study itself. Who do they actually study?
So the participants were 109 university students. All of them were training to become history teachers.
Okay.
And they were from 4 different state universities in Turkey at various points in their degree programs.
And how did they gather the information? What was the method?
It was a survey study, descriptive and relational, meaning they described the situation and looked for relationships between factors. They used convenient sampling.
Which just means they included people who were readily available to participate.
Exactly. And they used 2 main tools, 2 questionnaires or scales.
Measure self-efficacy and readiness.
Right. For self-efficacy, they used a 21-item distance education self-efficacy belief scale. The paper reports it was very reliable and valid, good psychometric properties.
Okay.
And this scale breaks self-efficacy down into 3 parts: skill-like, confidence with the tech, content knowledge confidence learning the subject matter online, and interaction confidence engaging with others online.
Okay. Tech skills, learning the stuff, and talking to people. Makes sense. What about readiness?
That was an 18-item readiness scale for online learning. It had been adapted into Turkish, and the paper said it also showed acceptable reliability.
Good. So they had these measures. What did they look at to see if it affected the students' self-efficacy? What were the variables?
They looked at a few things: gender, grade level, like were they first years, second years, and so on.
Right.
Also, the main device they used for distance learning, was it mostly a cell phone, a laptop, a desktop computer?
Okay, that's interesting.
And maybe the most interesting variable, what the students themselves identified as the #1 disadvantage or problem they faced in distance education.
What kinds of problems were options?
Things that probably sound familiar to a lot of people, like running out of mobile data, not having a quiet space to study or attend class, feeling lesson time was too short, using a device that wasn't really adequate, or just general internet connection problems.
Wow, yeah. Those are definitely real-world challenges. Okay, so let's get to the meat of it. What did they actually find? How did these variables relate to self-efficacy? Let's start with gender.
Okay. Overall, for the total distance education self-efficacy score, they found no significant difference between the male and female participants.
No difference overall. But were there differences in the subparts?
Yeah.
Skill, content, interaction.
Yes. Specifically for the content knowledge subdimension confidence in learning the history material online, they did find a significant difference. It favored the males in this particular sample.
So overall confidence, similar. But males in this group felt more sure about actually learning the subject matter via distance ed. Interesting.
Yeah, that's what the data showed for this group, yeah.
What about the device? Phone versus laptop versus desktop. Did that make a difference to confidence?
Surprisingly, no. The study found no significant difference in overall self-efficacy based on the primary device used.
Really? That is a bit surprising. You might think having a bigger screen, a proper keyboard, would make you feel more capable than just using a phone.
You might think so, yeah. But for this group's overall self-efficacy, it didn't seem to make a statistically significant difference according to the findings.
Okay. How about grade level? Did being earlier or later in their degree program matter?
Yes, that one did show a significant difference, both for overall self-efficacy and specifically for the interaction part of self-efficacy.
Okay, and which way did the difference go? Who felt more confident?
It was the first-year students. They showed significantly higher overall self-efficacy and higher interaction self-efficacy compared to the second-year students.
First years felt more confident than second years.
Yes. And the paper also notes that first graders tended to have the highest scores on the skill and content knowledge parts, too. Third graders often had lower or more variable scores, especially in skill and interaction.
Wow. So the newest students felt the most confident overall, and particularly about interacting online, compared to those who'd been there a year longer. That kind of goes against what you might expect, maybe. You'd think experience might build confidence.
It does raise questions, doesn't it? The study shows the what the difference exists, but the why, well, that invites speculation. Maybe something about their prior experiences before university or the initial university support structures.
Yeah, lots of possibilities. Okay, now for the disadvantages. This feels really important. How did facing these problems impact confidence?
Right. So for the skill aspect, confidence in their technical abilities, they found no significant difference based on the main disadvantage reported.
Okay, so even if they had problems, it didn't necessarily make them feel they lacked the basic tech skills.
Seems that way. Maybe they felt the problem was external, not a lack of their own skill. But for the other areas, there were differences.
Which areas?
Significant differences showed up for content knowledge self-efficacy, interaction self-efficacy, and the overall self-efficacy score, depending on the reported disadvantage.
Okay, walk us through those, because some of them seemed a bit odd when I first read the summary.
They were definitely nuanced. Okay, for content knowledge confidence, a significant difference was found between the group whose main problem was running out of mobile data and the group whose main issue was lack of a quiet workspace.
And which group was higher?
The mobile data group actually showed significantly higher confidence in learning the content knowledge compared to the quiet workspace group.
Wait, hang on. The students whose biggest barrier was literally being unable to connect because they ran out of data felt more confident about learning the material online than the students whose main problem was just finding a quiet spot.
That's what the statistical comparison between those two specific groups indicated for content knowledge. Yes, it is counterintuitive on the surface.
Definitely. What about for interaction confidence?
There were several significant differences there. For instance, the mobile data group had higher interaction confidence compared to both the quiet workspace group and the internet problems group.
Okay.
Also, the group citing an inadequate device as their main problem had higher interaction confidence compared to, again, the quiet workspace group and the internet problems group.
So again, it seems like the groups facing concrete access issues, no data, bad device, reported higher interaction confidence in these comparisons than those facing environmental issues like noise or general connectivity issues. That's puzzling.
It is puzzling when you look at those specific pairings. For the overall self-efficacy score, the only significant difference they found was between the mobile data group and the internet connection problems group.
And who was higher there?
Again, the mobile data group reported higher overall self-efficacy than the internet connection problems group.
So how did the researchers make sense of this pattern? It seems backwards in places.
Their conclusion, as stated in the paper, was that these findings do show that internet-related issues, mobile data, general connectivity, are negatively impacting these students and are factors in their self-efficacy levels.
Okay.
While the specific comparisons between certain pairs of disadvantaged groups yielded those surprising results, the authors seem to interpret the overall pattern, especially maybe for interaction, as highlighting that internet access and device problems are significant barriers linked to confidence. Perhaps the way the questions were asked or the grouping led to these specific comparison outcomes.
Right. So maybe don't read too much into the specific surprising comparisons, but take the broader point that internet and device challenges do relate to self-efficacy beliefs.
That seems to be the author's takeaway, that these technical barriers are important factors influencing confidence, even if the specific group differences weren't always as expected.
Okay. That helps clarify. And finally, what about readiness? How did feeling ready for online learning connect with feeling confident?
Now this finding was very clear-cut. The study found a significant and positive relationship between the students' online learning readiness levels and their distance education self-efficacy.
Positive relationship meaning?
Meaning the higher their readiness score, the higher their self-efficacy score tended to be. This was true for overall self-efficacy and also for all three subdimensions: skill, content knowledge, and interaction.
So, simply put, feeling more prepared for online learning went hand in hand with feeling more confident about doing it successfully.
Exactly. A strong, consistent link. And the paper notes this matches up well with findings from other research in the area. Readiness matters.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize this. What are the big takeaways? What does this study of future history teachers tell us? And why should you, our listener, care?
Well, for this specific group, it highlighted some unexpected things. Confidence wasn't really tied to gender overall or even the device used, which you might assume would matter.
Right.
But it was influenced by how far along they were in their studies with newer students, surprisingly, feeling more confident. And it was definitely influenced by the practical disadvantages they faced, especially around internet access and devices, even if the exact patterns were complex.
And the clearest findings seem to be about readiness.
Absolutely. That feeling of being prepared, of having the baseline skills and mindset for online learning, that readiness was strongly, positively linked with self-efficacy across the board. Higher readiness, higher confidence.
So this matters for anyone involved in online education, right? Whether you're teaching, learning, designing programs.
Definitely. It tells us that self-efficacy and readiness are crucial pieces of the puzzle for success. Understanding what affects them, like feeling prepared, like overcoming those technical hurdles, helps us see where support is needed.
It's not just about the technology itself, but about people's belief in their ability to use it effectively and their fundamental readiness for that environment.
Precisely. It underscores the importance of both the tools and the user's confidence and preparation.
So, pulling it all together from this deep dive, the core message seems to be that readiness, feeling prepared for online learning, and how you perceive and navigate challenges, especially technical ones, are major drivers of your confidence in distance education.
Yes, it really brings the focus onto that interplay between preparation, dealing with friction points, and the resulting self-belief.
Which leads us to a final thought for you to chew on. Given this study's strong link between readiness and self-efficacy, and seeing how its technical disadvantages impacted confidence, even in complex ways, how do we go beyond just providing the tech? How can we, as individuals, educators, or institutions, proactively build that sense of readiness? How can we foster genuine self-efficacy so that people feel capable online? What practical steps could we take, knowing what influences this confidence, to help everyone feel more empowered in distance learning, moving beyond just hoping the Wi-Fi holds